Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Thunderbolts. I feel like I've said this in a lot of my reviews recently, but Thunderbolts is one of my most anticipated movies of this year. There was a lot of talent behind this film. We get to catch up with a lot of, I would say, lesser known characters, which is always a lot of fun. And I'm so happy to say that I really enjoyed this film. But before we go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. We're getting closer and closer to 300 subscribers. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And if you're not new here, share this video around with any friends or family. It could really help the channel grow and it would absolutely make my day. So starting off, I have seen some people say that they think that this is the best MCU film since Endgame. And while I'm not quite ready to give it that title, there's been some really good films like Shang-Chi, Far From Home. I will say it's certainly close. This is a fantastic movie. I'm going to have to let it sit with me just a little bit, but I'm not going to argue with you at all if you say it's the best film since Endgame. It really is that good. And this film is good in so many different ways, but this film really soars when we just have these characters interacting with one another. I think that's the thing I want to talk about first, because the chemistry between these characters, between these actors, is absolutely amazing. It honestly kind of reminds me a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy in that respect. But the chemistry between everybody was just so on point. It was amazing. There's a lot of moments in this film where characters are just talking or maybe they're arguing, and I absolutely loved it. Those were some of the best moments of the film. Yeah, the action in this film is good, but like I said, I think the best moments are when these characters are interacting with each other. They're just talking with each other. This is really a character-driven story, and I feel like sometimes that's a little bit of what we've been missing, but we really dig deep and focus on these characters and their interactions, and I loved it. Everything just felt so natural. Big credit to the screenwriters Eric Pearson and Joanna Kahlo. Joanna has worked on shows like The Bear and Beef, and Eric has worked on some other various Marvel projects kind of in the script department. So I think those two teaming up ended up being a really good duo to write this script. But I also want to give credit to the actors in terms of the chemistry, because at times it kind of felt like a lot of the interactions were almost improvised as well. But they did a great job giving a lot of depth to these characters. I think they give the most depth to Yelena and Red Guardian, Bob, and then we got some more depth from John Walker. I do wish we got more from Ghost. I understand she's not really the main focus of this story, but we really don't learn anything new about her since we last saw her. So it was good to see her character again. We just didn't really get to dive deep into her character. And we didn't really get any character depth from Bucky in this. We have a ton of depth from various projects, so that background's kind of carrying over here. That is a lot of the heavy lifting, but that's okay. I just enjoy spending more time with this character. We do see him struggling to be a congressman, but this really is Yelena's movie. We see most of this film really from her point of view. We really get to dig deep into her character and to her emotions, and I absolutely loved it. I feel like they used this movie to let us get to know her better as a character, and it makes me feel like they have big plans for her going forward in the MCU. I have a feeling she'll end up being a very important character to the MCU, just like how Black Widow was. But I honestly can't say enough good things about how Yelena was written in this film. They do a great job with Val, too. She's our antagonist here. She's just such a really interesting character, and I'm glad we get more from her in this film. We've seen her pop up here and there in different projects. We never really got to spend a lot of time with her. We really never got to dig into her character a little bit more, but we get to do that here. Having her be more of an important part to this story was really great. And she's such an interesting character too. She's not just this mustache twirling villain, but she is a power hungry character. She's always trying to twist everything to be in her favor. And I think that just makes for a really fun antagonist. She's a lot of fun to root against. They really didn't hold back on Sentry and his backstory either. They deal with some pretty heavy stuff involving his backstory, and I'm glad they didn't shy away from it. I think they handled it very well. They also dive pretty deep into some themes of mental health and depression, and I think they handled that all really well too. I think the film overall has a great message, and as somebody who also has struggled with mental health, there's a couple scenes in here that, just kind of hit close to home, and it made me tear up just a little bit. Honestly, I think it was handled really beautifully. And on top of all that, I think I have to say this movie was really funny. Like, this was probably the funniest movie I've seen in a long time. I laughed at basically everything involving the Red Guardian. Other than when the film did go dark and serious, I found myself smiling basically through the whole thing. But I think the biggest compliment I can give this film is that it made me feel something, and that's exactly what you want. I feel like some of the projects that Marvel has been doing that a lot of people have just felt are okay, I feel like they weren't making you feel something. I feel like they are more successful telling a story when they get you to connect to characters, not just look for spectacle, but they get you to really connect to these characters and they make you feel something. I think the pacing throughout this whole film was very well done. I remember sitting in the theater just thinking, this is all flowing together so well. Nothing ever felt rushed, nothing ever felt slow. Everything felt like it was moving at the right pace. I feel like we spent the right amount of time in certain locations and we spent the right amount of time with different characters. And I liked the story. The story moved along at a great pace, but it was a relatively simple and straightforward story. There wasn't really any giant twists or turns in it, but I don't think it really needed it. I already did spend some time talking about the writing, but now I want to talk about the performances, and all of the performances here were great. But the absolute standout for me is Florence Pugh. She was absolutely fantastic in this film. This really is her movie. I think Florence Pugh shows why she is one of the best actors working today. She's one of the best actors of this generation. She's incredibly talented. She has a huge range. She pulls off comedy expertly. She has amazing chemistry with the rest of the cast. She bounces off of them perfectly, but she brings so much depth and heartache to this character. I feel like she really just breaks through the screen barrier with her performance. She connects with the audience and she gets a ton of emotion across, even with just like small facial expressions. She has one conversation in this film with Red Guardian, and that was one of the moments that made me tear up. Her performance there was just incredibly powerful. Like, I felt her performance deep in my soul. And speaking of the Red Guardian, I love David Harbour in basically everything, but he's awesome here as well. He's really funny in this. He's absolutely hilarious. He is mostly comic relief in this, but there are a few times where he does get serious, and I think those moments are where he really gets to show off his acting chops. He's a great performer as well, but he's honestly like the perfect comedic relief. He never was too goofy or too silly. He was just really funny, and I think all of the laughs were perfectly placed. Wyatt Russell is great too. I think he's a great performer as well. We do get to explore a little bit of depth with him, but as a whole, he only really has one or two notes here to play with John Walker, but he does those one or two notes very well. He does really good with what he's given. And Sebastian Stan is always good. I will take Sebastian Stan in anything. I will take Sebastian Stan as Bucky for the rest of time. Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Val was a lot of fun. I'm so glad we got to spend more time with her and this character. There's a lot of sides to Val that she has to tackle, and I think she nails it. I'm definitely excited to see her in more projects in the future. And Hannah John-Kamen does a good job with what she's given. She's just not necessarily given a lot. She's just there to serve the story, have great chemistry with the rest of the cast, and kind of fill out the rest of the Thunderbolts team. But one impressive thing I think is done in this is Louis Pullman absolutely, from the beginning, makes you care about Bob through his performance. That's a difficult task, but it's exactly what you need him to do because we're introduced to this pretty major character in this film with not really any context from past films or past projects, and there's no been There hasn't been any teasing or anything like that. So we meet him for the first time in this film, and we don't have much time to connect to him as a character, but I think he does a great job and pulls that off successfully. I feel like his turn from Sentry to Void maybe is a little bit quick, especially for those who aren't that familiar with the character from the comics. So I get that complaint, but I do think he does a great job with all three of the personalities were shown in this film. And I'm honestly very excited to see him again in Avengers Doomsday. The action is a lot of fun, even though we do get to see a very powerful character with Sentry. A lot of the action is really grounded, and the director has done some interviews. They've done so much of this action practically, and I feel like you can feel that. They put these characters in some interesting situations, and it leads to some really fun and exciting action. I love the way the director, Jake Schreier, has done basically everything in this film, but for him to not have a ton of action experience, I think he did great in that aspect. I think he also handled the visual effects really well. I didn't really have any visual effects issues. I love the look of the Void, both the location and the character. When the characters went into the Void, they had some really interesting cinematography and some effect work there. The director said he took some inspiration from some real life events for those shadows, and I just thought that was a really cool, kind of creepy and haunting touch to that. But overall, I had so much fun with this film. I want to see it in theaters again, even though I'm not quite ready to give it the crown of the best Marvel movie since Endgame. It's definitely close. It's up there, and I think it's probably in the top third of all of the MCU films. The action is great. The story is good. It's solid. The chemistry between the team is absolutely top notch, and we have some really great performances here, especially with Florence Pugh as Yelena. She's the absolute standout. This is her film. They had some heavy topics that they were dealing with, but they did such a good job handling those. But I feel like this film is what happens when you tell a heartfelt story with extraordinary characters and you mix all of that with some really talented filmmakers. Also, I will say, make sure you stay all the way through the credits. There are two post-credit scenes. The first one right after like the stylized credits. It's more of like the kind of jokey post-credit scene, but the one at the very end of the film, it is actually the longest post-credit scene in MCU history. And I think that last post-credit scene sets up a couple of really interesting things going forward in the MCU. And yes, they do address the asterisks in the title. And I think whenever you go and see the film, you will be pretty satisfied. I really loved Thunderbolts. It's such a great time at the theaters. It felt like a classic, awesome MCU film. I'm going to give Thunderbolts a 4.5 out of 5. But that's it. That's my review of Thunderbolts. Have you seen this film? Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.